Do it. Do it! Come on, kill me, I'm here! Come on, do it now! Kill me!
Schwartzy, the podcast. It's a Schwartzy show.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Schwartzy, the podcast, the Schwartzy show. That's something I haven't said in a while. It's exciting to be able to say that.
Yeah. You can follow us at
Thirsty for More
and,
presents
and
on Instagram and at More Thirsty on Twitter.
Yeah.
And also give us a like and a review on any of the platforms that you listen to, because it helps out. It helps the show.
Please do.
And I know that a lot of you are listening. Just take 2 seconds right now, if you haven't already done so. Give us a 5-star review right now.
Yeah.
Literally, pause. We'll wait.
Yeah.
Or just pause it. It's technology. I mean, like, we started this show. It was Schwartzy. It was always fucking Schwartzy. It was never Van Damme. It was never anybody else. And so, like, the thing that drove us to this is Schwartzy, which is why we're here tonight.
Yeah, for sure. I haven't watched this yet.
So we should explain, by circumstance, we're able to be in the same room together to record this episode. Happy New Year's to everybody.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining us again. We are very happy to be here, and we're very happy to be able to do this together in the same room.
Yeah, record at the same time.
I've missed that very much.
Yeah, me too.
But okay, so Kay sent us a video.
Yeah.
So we need to contextualize.
Yeah.
So what's going on, dude? What's going on in the world? New events, current events.
Well, there was an attempt at an insurrection on, what was it, the 6th?
It was the 6th. A day that will live in infamy. Was it the 6th? We don't even remember the date.
Yeah.
Yeah. An attempted insurrection in the United States. The United States of America. And it was because Trump incited an insurrection. Like, he just
he just like kept telling people that the election was rigged, and yeah.
And like, obviously it's in the news because it's a really big deal. But what's interesting about it, I think, is that okay, so everybody probably has an opinion on this at this point, right?
Yeah. And it's still unfolding. There's nothing you can do really until Biden is in. And even then, it's like...
Even then, there's a lot of people that feel like this, and it's really scary.
Yeah. Yeah, it is really scary.
Like, this is what people were worried about. And like, this, we're going to get to this because this is what the video is about, the Schwartzy video.
Yeah.
But I think that Schwartzy is somebody who's been like a pretty, like, as far as Democrats go, like, reasonable person.
Republicans go, you mean?
Oh, Republicans, Democrats, no, but Republicans go, yes.
Yeah.
And yeah, so like, he's always been like a voice of reason. He's never been like a fan of Trump's. I mean, he had to come out and say something.
Yeah.
And I appreciate that he did, because it's like, it's not being treated, even with everything that happened, because Republicans are in such a tight spot. They're like, they've fucked themselves so much by being such lying enablers for fucking 4 years and obstructionists, that they're just like, they literally cannot say shit.
Yeah.
And so now, like, there's a call from certain Republicans, and it's always the same crowd. It's always your fucking, like,
Mitt Romney,
your Susan, what's her name?
Collins.
Susan Collins, and like Schwartzy are like the Republicans that like have like a semblance of us. Okay, Schwartzy was always very outspoken about Trump, but
he also has nothing to lose.
He has absolutely nothing to lose.
Yeah.
And so, like, it's one of those things where it's like, I mean, I get it, but like you picked the wrong side, and like you have to live with the fucking consequences now. Like there's no other way about it. So Schwartzy fucking, put out this like ultra patriotic, ultra, I mean, it's like it's the old American story of like, we can get through this, our democracy, whatever, all that shit. But, like in the deep tradition of Schwartzy's, I think that you should turn this on and watch it right now with us.
Sure.
We should just have it on as we go. We got Kay's joining us in the fucking chat.
Man, immediately how your tone and tenor shifts when when you're live versus when you're... Sorry, I didn't mean to make you feel self-conscious.
Not at all.
All right, I'm going to
If
watch
anyone's
it.
making me feel self-conscious, it's Kay's.
Should I watch it live or should I watch it with my headphones on?
Watch it live.
Do it live!
Shut up.
As an immigrant in this country, I would like to say a few words to my fellow Americans and to our friends around the world about the events of recent days.
Of recent days.
I'm very aware of Kristallnacht.
Kristallnacht.
It was a night of rampage against the Jews carried out in 1938 at the Nazi equivalent of the Proud Boys. Wednesday was the day of broken glass right here in the United States. The broken glass was in the windows of the United States Capitol. But the mob did not just shatter the windows of the Capitol. They shattered the ideals we took for granted. They did not just break down the doors of the building that housed American democracy. They trampled the very principles on which our country was founded. Now, I grew up in the ruins of a country that suffered the loss of its democracy. I was born in 1947, 2 years after the Second World War. Growing up, I was surrounded by broken men drinking away their guilt over their participation in the most evil regime in history. Not all of them were rabid anti-Semites or Nazis. Many just went along, step by step, down the road. They were the people next door. Now, I've never shared this so publicly because it is a painful memory. But my father would come home drunk once or twice a week, and he would scream and hit us and scare my mother. I did not hold him totally responsible because our neighbor was doing the same thing to his family, and so was the next neighbor over. I heard it with my own ears and saw it with my own eyes. They were in physical pain from the shrapnel in their bodies and in emotional pain from what they saw or did. It all started with lies and lies and lies and intolerance. So being from Europe, I've seen firsthand how things can spin out of control. I know there is a fear in this country and all over the world that something like this could happen right here. Now, I do not believe it is, but I do believe that we must be aware of the dire consequences of selfishness and cynicism. President Trump sought to overturn the results of an election, and of a fair election. He sought a coup by misleading people with lies. My father and our neighbors were misled also with lies, and I know where such lies lead. President Trump is a failed leader. He will go down in history as the worst president ever. The good thing is that he soon will be as irrelevant as an old tweet. But what are we to make of those elected officials who have enabled his lies and his treachery? I will remind them of what Teddy Roosevelt said. Patriotism means to stand by the country. It does not mean to stand by the president. John F. Kennedy wrote a book called Profiles in Courage. A number of members of my own party, because of their own spinelessness, would never see their names in such a book, I guarantee you. They're complicit with those who carried the flag of self-righteous insurrection into the Capitol. But it did not work. Our democracy held firm. Within hours, the Senate and the House of Representatives were doing the people's business and certifying the election of President-elect Biden. What a great display of democracy. Now, I grew up Catholic. I went to church, to Catholic days I remember a phrase that is relevant today.
Catholic Schwartzy.
Servant's heart. It means serving something larger than yourself. See, what we need right now from our elected representatives is a public servant's heart. We need public servants that serve something larger than their own power or their own party. We need public servants who will serve higher ideals, the ideals in which this country was founded, the ideals that other countries look up to. So over the past few days, friends from all over the world have been calling me distraught and worried about us as a nation. One woman was in tears about America, wonderful tears of idealism about what America should be. Those tears should remind us of what America means to the world. I've told everyone who is called that as heartbreaking as all this is, America will come back from these dark days and shine our lights once again. Now you see this sword? This is the Conan sword. Now here's the thing about swords. The more you temper a sword, the stronger it becomes. The more you pound it with a hammer and then heat it in the fire and then thrust it into the cold water and then pound it again and plunge it into the fire and into the water, the more often you do that, the stronger it becomes.
Oh, man.
I'm not telling you all this because I want to become an expert sword maker, but our democracy is like the steel of this sword. The more it is tempered, the stronger it becomes. Our democracy has been tempered by wars, injustices, and insurrections.
Justices.
I believe, as shaken as we are by the events of recent days, we will come out stronger because we now understand what can be lost. We need reforms, of course, so that this never ever happens again. We need to hold accountable the people that brought us to this unforgivable point. And we need to look past ourselves, our parties and disagreements, and put our democracy first. And we need to heal together from the drama of what has just happened. We need to heal not as Republicans or as Democrats, but as Americans. Now, to begin this process, no matter what your political affiliation is, I ask you to join me in saying to President-elect Biden, President-elect Biden, we wish you great success as our president. If you succeed, our nation succeeds. We support you with all our hearts as you seek to bring us together. And to those who think they can overturn the United States Constitution, know this: you will never win. President-elect Biden, we stand with you today, tomorrow, and forever in defense of our democracy from those who would threaten it. May God bless all of you, and may God bless America.
So, I mean, you heard yourself, like, compelling stuff from Schwartzy. Calls out his own party, Schwartzy. Hyper patriot Schwartzy. Like, the most, like, United States of America Schwartzy ever. But, like, I do feel like he's hearkening back to, like, a time. I don't know. What's your reaction to it? Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, no, please finish that sentence. I want to know, like, I want to know what your reaction is to it first, because you watched it. You and Case watched it before I did. I don't know.
It's hearkening back to an old time. It's hearkening back to a let's do this together time. This has really shaken us. This is how far this can go. It's very much like, you know, I think he's doing probably a responsible thing. I think it's probably a good thing for people to hear. But, you know, like for like a media literate person like you or I, it feels very, you know what I mean? Like, okay, the thing is, like,
it feels what?
It just feels like he's like, it feels hollow in a way. Like it's like this brand of Americanism. This was the nail in the coffin of that.
Yeah. I mean, I I completely agree. And also, the thing is, the problem with it isn't just that that is the final nail in the coffin of that ideological framework that America's designed itself, presented itself as.
Yeah.
The problem is that people keep seeing these events, no matter how extreme and how widespread, as the problem. And the problem is that even those people in that crowd are all living in their own realities. And that's a shitty state to be in, because if you can't, they have at least a shared goal.
Yeah.
And whatever is called the left at all in the States anymore, at all, none of them seem to have a shared goal whatsoever.
No.
Those people who saw it, that were Republican, a lot of them just don't see that as like, oh, well, like, I mean, that's not what fascism looks like. And it's like, yeah, that kind of is
exactly what fascism looks like.
Yeah, and or at least authoritarianism, whatever you want to call it, in terms of how extreme you want to be.
Yeah.
But it is
and
terrifying.
I think that also its connection to white supremacy can't be understated. Yeah. It is at the root of it, I would say, because there is a no, mine. Like there's an attitude of like, fuck you, this is mine. And like it's very, I think it is like at the, like people I think are uncomfortable with that, because they're like, well, maybe there's like poverty and there's like, there is all of that, but there is definitely like an ideology rooted in all of that is very much like a, we are white, and this is like a scary fucking kind of white, because it is indignant. It is, like it's just like, it's like white, when people were saying like it's white privilege, it's fucking white power on display.
It's definitely way beyond. Like, these aren't, the thing is, it's not if somebody's looking at it from the lens of privilege, I think they're wrong in the first place. Like, this is far beyond that, and it is definitely an insurrection. I would pull back and sort of view it from a perspective of a structural problem still, in terms of, man, like these people, they don't have a lot. It's not, I don't mean as a poverty thing. I mean just as a whole, like they are in a cult, they are brainwashed, and like, what do you do with that? Like, what do you do? Like, and
like absolutely nothing you say to them can convince them otherwise. That's the thing. They to them, the source of the information is what makes the information, like, what gives it any credibility. So, which is
ironic, because they don't believe in the credibility of Facebook or Twitter, but they get all their news from that.
Right.
So it's like all the stuff on like where people are like, oh, the mainstream media like is lying to you, and it's like, okay, all right, but like, who, like, why should I believe you? Like, what do you mean? Like, there's no difference. Like, who are you?
Yeah, and like what gives you any access to knowledge or information that like
that's
you
any
don't
different
have any
from me?
Resources? Like, what are you talking about? Yeah. So that aside, all of that, not aside, but in context with what, like, let's get back to the Schwartzy video. Do you think that this speaks to anybody? Or do you think that this speaks only to the like head nodders? Like, are there Republicans out there who see this and say, this isn't my, like,
yeah, of course there are Republicans out there that there are like people who are mainstream Republican people, not politicians. The politicians have made their own bed. That's it.
Well, that's an interesting point that I think Schwartzy made, is because he called out his fellow Republicans in Congress and in the Senate as spineless.
Yeah.
So that was good. in the sense of like, I think that people won't necessarily like people, when everyone's like, oh, the world's in shock, the world's in blah, blah, blah. The world actually just wants to see what you do next.
Yeah, they're more scared for Americans than they are like, they're scared and sad for Americans. They're not like it used to be laughing at them, and now they're just like, whoa, guys, like this isn't supposed to happen in your countries. Like the thing is, the problem I think with a lot of the sort of like neggy sort of memes that come out about like, puh, America, like, see, it's always been that way. But an image does matter, and to uphold a sort of like image within the rest of the world does matter.
Yeah, I think so.
And it does hold up ideals for people, even however phony baloney people want to be like, say the ideals of Americanism are. Which is true to whatever degree.
Well, that's what I think the point Schwartzy was trying to illustrate when he was talking about the woman who called him in tears.
Yeah.
About American idealism, and he uses the word idealism, and I think that's interesting because I think you're right. As much as like you and I are cynical.
I'm not cynical.
Well,
I'm not a cynical person.
Hold on. I mean, I think I'll clarify what I meant. You and I are cynical towards this kind of American exceptionalism because you and I have firsthand known in our lives towards like our region of the world what American, freedom in quotations and democracy in quotations has done and brought. So like we knew about this stuff. We actually used to get called out for speaking out against America in any kind of critical way, right? Because we knew that like America was a place that like would use 2,000-pound uranium bombs on a population of people for no reason. Like for no reason other than like to assert some kind of like power and dominance. And we can,
particularly in the region.
We can talk about like definitely critically what Serbia was doing in Kosovo. We can talk about critically what was going on in the region during the like wars of the 90s. Those are all valid and like separate points. But you and I know that there is this country that called itself the bringer of democracy and who like, had all of these like ideals.
Yeah.
That, aren't necessarily something that like really translated in terms of like its effect, right?
Well, yeah, they're not really. I mean, the thing is, if platitudes and the way you present yourself don't matter, why argue for trans people, gay people, people of color to be more represented in media? What is that fight for, if not the idea of representation, a representative of an idea?
Yeah.
Because it's like those things don't solve anything materially necessarily.
Yeah. No, and I agree. Right? And that's where I agree with. Yeah. I agree with you that I know you agree with me. I was going to say, on the other hand, you do have this, the standing of America in the eyes of the world as a global leader, as like leader of the free world, as they like to call them, which is like a colloquialism, but it does have like a weight and a meaning to it. And I think that the rhetoric of Donald Trump has emboldened a lot of really horrible stuff all over the world. And it's also given way to another type of like global cynicism, in the sense of like, they're no better than us. Look at them struggle over there. Fuck it. We don't need to believe in anything. And it makes the waters murky surrounding like what is just, in quotation marks. Yeah. It's such a dicey thing to talk about, because it's like,
but the problem with it is that America still maintains its in that context, America still maintains its standing as though it did have credibility in the world in the first place, which it didn't. Most people in the world know what America is like. The thing that gives way to what you're saying is that the social media landscape is the difference between now and before. Something like that people keep trying to compare to is different times in history, and the problem with it is that we really are in just not that time of history, not in any time of history, but now.
Yeah.
Because social media didn't exist before. Propaganda didn't exist in the style that it does before. I've heard people several times, people that I think of as like funny or interesting and smart, say things like, what do you think fucking dank memes convinced anybody? And yeah, they did.
Totally did.
They did.
That's the thing. You've been talking about memes, and you've been talking about 4chan, and you've been talking about all of those fucking things for like decades at this point, or a decade.
A decade. But and talking about things like rhetoric, the right, in terms of their usage of memes as not just as propaganda, but a meme itself functioning as a right-wing tool for a really long time.
A meme is a tool, and it can be used as a right or left or whatever wing tool.
But I think it just like everything, every idea favors right-wing ideas because the right-wing ideas are much more simple.
They're simple.
Much more digestible. And like,
I don't know if it favors. I know what you mean. I don't know if it favors it. I know that the thing is, like, you're right. Nuance is hard to communicate through a meme, but you can. And like, and I know you're skeptical or hesitant, but I feel like it's really easy to communicate really quickly, and like it's functioning on multiple different levels. So like, there's a meme that, for instance, like our dad would see that we would totally understand, and we'd have to explain like 7 layers of meaning to him. Yeah. You know what I mean? It's levels of like media literacy and like context literacy. And I feel like that can be weaponized. That understanding can be weaponized, because if you already believe something and someone shows it to you in a way that makes you excited, either with a dopamine response or like any kind of like sort of visual brain chemical response, then that can be really powerful.
It can be. The thing is, the sad thing is that it was weaponized. It the spark of it is a weapon, and then it just evolves by itself. That's the brilliance of whether or not we want to talk about like Russia being an influence on that kind of like thinking in terms of fuck it, let's disperse as much information as possible. Who cares?
Yeah, they take in the like chaotic approach
of just
like let's shoot everything out into the ether from every side we can imagine.
Yeah, and like wherever it benefits us, we measure our responses and elevate, whether it be BLM or Trumpers in certain sections. Wherever it's needed the most, we'll just like emphasize these particular parts.
But if you're saying that this is like a tactic, and it's being used as a weapon of like on a like I guess meta war level, on a meta information, on a weaponized information level, do you think that like
what I'm saying is that it what I'm saying is when it starts out as we can weaponize this, and then because it takes a life of its own, people feel the need to care about those things a lot more, and they feel a connection to those things a lot more. And the unfortunate reality is that when you try and explain to whomever, hey, this isn't what reality is, they can so easily respond to what do you, and they have a point. What do you mean by reality?
Yeah. Yeah, I think you're right.
Because like I can go on and look at Schwartzy, and I can be like, well, Schwartzy's saying something true. Schwartzy's saying something that I agree with. And you don't even have to go that extreme. You don't even have to go that far to be like, oh, well, he's part of the mainstream media and that's all colluding and they're trying to fool you. Like, you don't even have to go that far. You can just be like, well, you know, he has privilege. He's got money. He can say whatever he wants and it's fine. You know, just that layer, which is true. All of those things can be true. But the impact is different. Like, can it be used in this way? When people say even, well, like, what do you mean by reality? It's like, yeah, like it's that nebulous now, where it's like, well, what do you mean? Well, what do you mean? Well, what do you mean? It's so distant from real life interactions between people. That it just becomes a nonsense. Like, you don't know what you're arguing anymore. Like, I get into this problem with Twitter all the time, where it's like, or Parler, which has been shut down. But like, you know, like I'll hit on a person.
Yeah, were you on Parler?
Yeah, I was on Parler. Yeah.
Isn't it like is it totally right wing social media? Was it like just right wing? What was it?
It was like right-wing Twitter, basically. It was that way. And like, you know, like I would get into these discussions. They were
Were you other just to troll people?
Not just to troll people, but like see if I could, like if I approached it in different ways, from a troll to like engaging with people, like, and it was all just like different levels of people either purposely misunderstanding or just like not understanding how an argument would function, you know? So it'd be like, you know, somebody would post something like that guy Enrique, the head of the Proud Boys now, the Cuban guy.
Yeah.
He posted something about how, you know, he posted something about Schwartzy's post and then called him a pedophile. And then I responded to him like, you know, Trump was not only accused of raping a 13-year-old, but he was also like good friends with Jeffrey Epstein. So like, I don't know what you mean. And then somebody immediately wrote, proof that. And it's like, yo, dude, just type in Jeffrey Epstein and fucking Trump and like, you know, you'll get that proof. And then immediately it was like, well, what about Bill Clinton? And it's like, I mean, you're the one bringing up Bill Clinton. I don't know, but sure, fuck Bill Clinton too. You know what I mean? Like, so it immediately becomes, because the emotions run so high with being, you know, called out for the person that is your cult leader, basically, like their god. It immediately they have to pivot to like, well, what about Bill Clinton? And it's like, I don't know. What about him? You're the one bringing him up.
Yeah.
Hey, I don't know who said that. You're the only one I heard say it. Do you know what I mean? It's literally that. And then it's like, they're trying to rope you into another discussion about something else, right? Because it's getting at their worldview, right? And that's everybody. That's me too. Like I've been in situations on Twitter where I've been totally wrong in a situation. I don't delete it because I don't care really. Like it's not like I have no stake in that game, right? Whereas there are people in the Twitter sphere that really use it as like a form of their money. Like we were talking about this a few days ago, but like it's a part of their brand, right? So if they lose it, they lose a stream of income.
Of course, yeah.
They're
often interconnected, right?
Yeah,
like everything is
exactly.
Interconnected.
So there are so many people, left and right, that are so built towards like, we need to keep this cash machine going, and it doesn't matter what it is.
Yeah,
right?
of course. And like, you know, anything on there is, you know, it's like public record basically. And it's
that doesn't matter though either, because you can fake a tweet. Like I've seen people on like posting, Nancy, this is an email from Nancy Pelosi, and it's like, like, what is this, a PDF from somebody? This is a screen grab? Like, the fuck out of here. I can get a screen grab and just like Photoshop something else in there. You know what I mean? Post it on Twitter the same day. So it's like, even that is like,
but like but they're appealing to people again who want to believe that thing.
Yeah.
And
we all want to believe things, right? Like,
of course,
there's no way to fight that. That's like, you know, I mean,
of course.
Yeah.
But now we have like a delivery mechanism of information that can give us the information that we want.
Yeah, or it's designed for that specifically.
It's designed for that specifically. And like, that's like a battle that I don't know how you fight.
No, that's the,
or I don't even know if it's
yeah.
I don't even know if you could call it a battle. It's just
that's the reality
it just
now.
is.
Yeah, that's it. It just is.
Yeah. And so I mean that's a deeper issue. But in terms of like this whole idea now for me that's interesting is that I don't think America has turned a corner necessarily. I mean, that can only be told by time, but we
into what? Into like fascism or
something?
No.
No. Just turned any kind of corner.
Oh, you think America's just the same?
Well, I just think it's like a steady decline into like just like
the end of the empire.
Yeah, it just seems like I don't know if there's like this is all just symptomatic.
Which part?
Oh, I mean, I think like all of it. Like I think Trump getting elected, the worship cult, like that's gotten so perverse.
Yeah,
like the like worship aspect of it is so humanly disgusting. It's like everything that's disgusting about humanity, basically, which is like you can see like all of the like power that's entwined in it and all of the will to power and like the like things that people are ready to do and think and like tying all of these like conscious like disgust to like Democrats are pedophiles and they're this and they're and like turning it into like the warping of all of it is just so like because the point of view, it you know what QAnon people think, know what, and like you're like you don't believe it and you don't agree with it, but you have to admit that there's a part of it that's like so like oddly like engaging and compelling.
It is.
It's like a reward system.
Yeah, because extremism is really engaging. You look at fucking boring, like we talk about TVO and PBS like before. Like those are all like fucking boring type of things. Like I care about them, I like them, I find them interesting.
Yeah,
because like I tend to get I mean my reality for so much of my life was movies. It wasn't like an external extreme intense reality. So like the kinds of things that I've gravitated in later in life has all been like Soderbergh, Michael Mann, boring ways of people doing things to create a compelling story. Now, don't get me wrong, those movies aren't boring or anything. I'm not saying it's like throwing shade or anything.
No, I know what you mean. But
like that's sort of like how to, or even like my YouTube feeds are all like how to do something, like mechanical, how to do the minutia of things.
Yeah. Well, one of the other things I wanted to discuss with you that I found interesting about the Schwartzy speech was I liked the part, obviously because we love Schwartzy, but I liked the part where he got vulnerable and spoke about his childhood and like the abuse from his dad and like how he contextualized and couched the abuse that he received as a child in this like trauma, right?
Yeah.
From the war and like all of that. And I feel like that's like pretty relatable on a removed level from us, even from like that like boomer generation of like our parents that experienced the trauma of their like wartime parents. And like
that sounded weirdly like a lot like thought this experience of
his dude dad. And like we have had the dad that we've had because with all of his anger issues and stuff from like what he inherited from his
this would be dad. My prescription, like and this is from a person who knows very little and is not very smart, but in order to like, because there are a lot of commentary. There's a lot of commentary on both what happened, what America is, what the failed state is of America, and so on and so forth, from a lot smarter people and a lot dumber people and people who want to use whatever they can for their side against the other.
Yeah.
And my prescription, just to like offer something that I think is actually like actual in some way. My prescription would be try hard to look at whoever is writing to you, whoever you're arguing with, as person, influenced by whatever they're influenced by.
Yeah.
Just this person, not necessarily sympathy or empathy, just this person, because they are.
Yeah.
And think about how many times you've been in a situation, whether it be an internet argument, like a Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, whatever. If you look at how you felt in moments of stupidity, because you've either been wrong or felt dumb.
Yeah.
You know, just like apply that try and apply it to everybody. Try and apply it to the person that you're talking to. And just be like, you know what? Like, if you can talk to a person that isn't of your persuasion in real life, like, you will see how much it is really difficult to be like, oh, this person's fucking stupid, or like, ask them questions. Be like, hey, like, where did you get that information? Like, well, like, can we look at it together? Can we look at it why we don't agree? At least about this one thing.
So take a Peter Boghossian street epistemology approach?
I mean, maybe. I don't know if Peter Boghossian is the street epistemologist. Isn't Peter Boghossian the... He's just a professor, right? He came up with the street epistemology thing.
I think he like promoted it at least.
Maybe. Anyway.
Well, yeah.
But yeah, like and I know it's really difficult to do that, especially now, because we're all trapped inside. But I as a person who's driven thousands of people at this point, doing Uber, and interacted with thousands of people, because I talk to so many of them, all of them, basically, whether it be to introduce myself and be like, hey, if you're in my car, tell me if you want me to change anything, or whatever, customer service type interaction, or like gotten into fucking the second person I ever drove told me about her brother having brain cancer. Am I gonna, like, if she told me in the next breath, oh, like, I love fucking Trump, like, am I gonna be like, fuck you, get out of my car? You know what I mean? Like, it'd be like, they're like, people will inflict all sorts of damage on people, but they're as human as anybody else. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. I really feel like a lot of what you were saying definitely resonated with me. I was thinking about how often I've been in situations where I feel like I've benefited the most from being in situations where I really felt stupid about something that I like just didn't know or had like any access to, or, you know, like it's like there are situations also where like multiple things can be true and accurate.
Exactly.
And I've known that just from being a person and from like experiencing so many different things. So like you know, like there's part of all of us, I think, that can relate to that person that like dives deep in something that we are diametrically opposed to morally, right?
Yeah.
For sure.
And not just that, but like also like, I don't fucking know. Like there are a lot of those people who just like, you ask them like, hey, like, how does a bill get through the Senate? You know what I mean? Like, how does government work? How does Canadian government work? Fuck America. Like, for us, like, do you know what an MPP is? Do you know what your MP is? Like, and trying to explain that level of complexity to somebody who like sees what they see, and they see it accurately because of the information presented to them.
Yeah, I will say though that I think this year has been, or like the past year, 2020 was really like a landmark year in getting people involved in local government and getting people involved in like provincial government, and that got me more involved, like just on the level of like going to protests and like writing to members of parliament and like watching like even like city debates about things, you know, like I'd never done things like that earlier.
I mean, the saying all politics is local, right?
And like that's a place that you can affect a lot of change, is like just from local politics.
Yeah. And yeah.
I think people Like that's what, you know, to broaden the conversation a bit. That's the thing that's broadened the perspective for me on people who are like, you know, like one of the things that I didn't know before this, like I knew before COVID hit that we were a world of people who either believed in a thing and had empathy, or didn't really have the same level of empathy and didn't believe in a thing. You know, I believed that. I knew that. But I really feel like it hit home and taught me and a lot of other people about where that line really is and who's on what side of it. You know what I mean? And there is a line of people that are just like, they don't care.
Yeah, I mean, like, I guess, like, I would be careful of that, because I've heard that from other people, and I don't agree, only in the sense that, like, I mean, the sort of idea of like limited empathy, like, I agree with. I think that there are only a certain type of, like, a certain number of people you can feel anything towards, and that it tends to be your surroundings. That tends to be the people you're surrounded by.
Sure, but like for me, I think that's a different argument. I think
well, I'm not arguing. I'm just trying to qualify what that means. I don't know what that means.
I know what you're saying, but like to broaden what you just said just a little bit to like, hey, if I do this, my action has this consequence, and that could potentially put another person at risk, in just like a sense of like, I know you're right, like thinking like, oh, like, I don't know, fucking the person that like leads me across the street every day at the crosswalk or whatever, you know what I mean? Like, I'm not going to have the same empathy towards, sure, that's like a no-brainer, but like, you're like, if you think about it in that way, then you'll wear a mask. You'll not, you know, like, you'll not put yourself or other people in potentially dangerous or uncomfortable situations.
Oh,
right?
Totally. I get that, but like, if your like media diet consists of like, they're trying to do this to you.
Yeah.
They are trying to, like, I've straight up met people who like, these are fucking young people too. Like, you know, oh, like, what's his name? Bill Gates wants to put a chip in you. That's the, like, I'm only wearing this mask for you because Uber tells me to, and I can't get a ride otherwise. But like, he's trying to fucking do that. And it's like, you know, like approaching it in that way, like thinking to that myself, this young person of color, you know, in her 20s is, you know, telling me that fucking Bill Gates wants to put a chip in her. You know what I mean? And like, what am I supposed to do with that? Like, you know, I can go get thrown through a loop and be like, oh no, like, am I to tell a person of color what they, do you know what I mean? Like, I can end up either in that situation, or I can be like, so like if we all have cell phones that can be tracked right now, why would Bill Gates need to put a chip in? Or is that approach better? Which it wasn't necessarily. But if I could get 2-3 hours with that person, I probably could ask a series of questions like that, whoever it may be. It doesn't matter who it is. But my point is that, like, you know, to put it in an extreme, I could frame this person, this 20-something who's from a different country, as having less empathy, but like, that wouldn't get me anywhere either. You know what I mean? Like, so it's like, I don't know what to do with the idea of like, well, they have less empathy, and it's like, okay, so should we fucking kill them? Like, what do you mean? What does that mean? You know, how do you deal with that? Like,
it's just like less or different access to information.
Yeah. And again, it's a prescription thing. Like, my prescription to that would be like, yeah.
Well, dude, like, if I had to, I could write off like half of the people I know in Serbia. You know what I mean? Like,
that's exactly my point.
Like, there's like, and what, you want to get into the culture of it? Culture over the last fucking 40 years of decline of like the socialist rule, and like they're quality of life to the point of, and like war, and what they have to believe, who, the government, like who do they believe?
Or Americans?
Like who are they supposed to believe?
Exactly.
They don't.
Exactly.
So they form this like idea of an allegiance to like another, to like in Serbia's case, Russia, because they're like, okay, this is a great power that's like similar to us in so many different respects. This is where I'm gonna live. This is where my belief and reality is gonna live. And like, you know, you get all of this ridiculous misinformation.
Yeah,
that's
which we have too. Like we get that too, in the sense
inundated
that like,
all the fucking time. It's like two different windows that I can look through. I talk to people who are like mortified when they realize that like that's when you realize the extent of like certain people's bubbles. Because like when I tell my like, and I say white in quotations, but like whiter than me friends, or like more Canadian than me friends, of like certain things that happen in Serbia or that are like going on or like whatever, they're like, well, what? Like, what? And it's like, yeah, dude, like, yeah.
Yeah, and you know, they're not wrong. Like, I mean, I think you were probably the first person to you were probably the first person to sort of frame something in a way of like, well, they can't leave. Like, those are people that can't leave. That's like an interesting perspective to have, because
can you put it into context so that
so like you know, I can go to Serbia and probably when I was like 16 or 17 or something like that. I remember when we were having a conversation where I basically explained to you that people are pretty much the same everywhere.
Yeah.
Like they want, then like years after that, you were describing to me, after years of living there, sort of this idea. I was upset about something or whatever, and I was like, why can't it just be a certain way? And you told me to appreciate the fact that I could get out of the situation either way. Like, and that applies to cultural differences, that applies to how people are in a specific place. Like I have the privilege to leave a place if I want to. This applies to also when I went to Nunavut and like was hanging out with people who were indigenous from there. And it was just like I could go in and be like, boy, this is really nice. It's lovely here. What do you do? And it's like, oh, like I work in a mine. And then I shut the fuck up asking that question to people, because it was like,
well, I mean,
get
like,
the
you
opportunity
could still engage people.
No. Engaging people is different, but like this sort of idea of my flippancy towards how beautiful a place is, or how I could enjoy this place versus how you have to enjoy this place.
Yeah.
Which is through, you know, booze and drugs, because you don't have a life outside of this.
Well, and the same thing in like Serbia. Like,
exactly.
So like for me to be like I like have to like I just have to be different, because like I have the option to leave, and so many people don't.
They don't,
and it immediately creates some kind of artificial barrier.
So like another prescription that I will make for people who want to engage with whatever they perceive as the other side is, what are your goals? Let me ask you that. Like, what do you feel is your goal principally for how you want the world to be?
I mean,
if that's too tough, I know that's like a really intense question.
Hard question. Yeah. We could go on for a long time about it, but yeah, like I understand what you mean. So like to like sort of
like narrow it down
to what matters to you.
Yeah, because like that's ultimately what day to day what people fight for.
But that the thing is, thinking that way is also comes from a level of privilege, because like if you ask that question to someone like Mama, let's say, who like didn't have a lot growing up, was like really, you know, like really fucking had to work for everything she earned, like she would say, my goal is to make money.
Yeah.
And
of course. But the that's a nuanced, specific case. You could, from any persuade. I know that it is still a privileged place to be, to be able to ask that question and quantify it in some way. But like, you could ask most people what their goals for like a society, like a culture, humanity, and most people would have like a less narcissistic like answer than just like money. Like, I know that hers comes from like a specific like
but we talk about action, right? We talk about what's actionable, and like, so like if we break it down to goals and we break it down to like what we want for, sometimes what we want isn't congruent with like that worldview, right?
Totally. But you can get
that's
to
why
that.
People hate liberalism. That's why people rail against liberalism, because it's inherently, people see inherent within it like a sort of like value, like misunderstanding. Right?
For
because
sure.
It's like,
for sure. Because whoever wants to choose to do whatever they want to do, as long as they're not hurting anybody else or whatever, however you want to describe sort of the epitome of liberalism. And I get that. I totally get that. But like in a one-to-one conversation, you can look for what, in a political conversation, one-to-one, when somebody says like, what are your goals? Not necessarily politically, but like, what are your goals for the platitudes, let's say?
Sure.
And like people say like, you know, oh, I want, you know, goodness for people, or I want, you know, health for people, and I want, happiness for people. Like ultimately the goal for most people is happiness, whatever that means.
For people.
For everybody. Because they want happiness for them. Right?
Sure.
They want happiness for other people.
Well, and they understand that they won't be happy if others aren't.
Exactly. Right? So it's you know, like the squirrely thing is like when you get into specifics, how a person is raised. If they're raised in a Catholic home, they might have certain views on LGBTQ. If they're raised in a you know, white Christian American home, like
they're probably racist.
They're probably racist, and they probably do have like
to some degree, to whatever degree.
Yeah, to whatever degree. If you're raised in America, you're a type of person. If you're raised as a Muslim American, you're different. If a Black American,
I mean,
you're
intersectionality, of course. Yeah,
the exact discussion of intersectionality, right?
Yes.
But the problem with the discussion of intersectionality, how it happens now, seems to fully disregard the negativity that surrounds intersectionality. So it's
that's like, like of course, like you know, like people, like I've noticed, like the best way to talk about these things is like from direct experience. So sorry, I've noticed that whenever I mention anything that's like anything culturally about Serbia that is at odds with the values that of the people that I know from here, whenever I mention it, like they'll react with some like discomfort, shock, and like, I don't know, like it maybe like a little bit of like understanding, and then trying to relate it to their own experience, which is all, you know, like all anybody can do. Like it's like, you know, it's an uncomfortable thing to be faced with, because like we are taught from a very young age here, especially, we're supposed to accept people and we're supposed to like understand, and that somehow having like a discussion of, or like a knowledge of nuance and things that are incompatible, views and emotions and feelings that are incompatible with each other, for those to just politely and like quietly coexist, right?
Yeah.
That's like what we're made to feel here, which is, you know, it's a way, It's a way to do it. I don't know. Like I realize
Some would
that
say
there's
the way.
well, there's a type of intellectual dishonesty within it that some people might see.
Like what?
I mean, I feel like that the thing is white people here, Anglo-Saxon, Protestant, whatever, the OG settlers who know that I'm 7th generation or whatever, like that always means that I am a colonizer. And like the thing is, like, not I am, but I am the descendant of. The thing, but sorry, let me just get my point. And like I feel like there's an element to that where it's like I just have to like the weight, if you're at all like a sensitive person to it, the weight of it is like absolutely soul crushing to the point of like inaction. So like there's this like moment of like I can't do anything about it, and I know that I'm culpable to a degree. Or like
which part I don't, I'm sort of lost, man.
Oh, I'm
like,
sorry. I'm sorry.
Like,
I was talking about like when you talk about relating privilege and helping people understand intersections of privilege. And like, I think there's an element to it of like cultural politeness where like you have to be like accepting of everything you hear because it's not your culture, and you know you're part of a dominant culture if you're a white person in North America.
Right.
You know what I mean? That's where I was going with this.
Right.
And like, so I feel like there's like a feeling of like personal culpability, or like I don't know how to like even communicate my displeasure with, you know, like I'm a sensitive person. I like to think of myself as like whatever. And like these are all worthwhile thoughts and feelings to be had. I just think that it causes a space, it causes a like fissure in any sort of honest, like intellectual honesty about any sort of subject. You know what I mean? Because like it's automatically couched in this like feeling of like guilt and remorse.
I mean, maybe. I think that depending on the context, I mean, I've had people who are Trump supporters in my car, and like, what am I going to do? Like, am I going to talk to it's not about discomfort. It's like how in this 15-minute ride, like, what am I going to do?
Well,
right?
this
so
is
the,
my famous story of being with like in like the tri-state area of and when I encountered the Nazis.
Yeah.
I mean, that was a crazy fucking adventure.
Yeah, for sure. When your car broke down.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Even like I've wanted to tell this story on the podcast,
and I told this story on the podcast.
I have in varying degrees of length, but I mean, like we were in the States. My band, our van broke down, and we were confronted by, or not confronted by, we were helped by a group of like, not a group, a family of guys. They were brothers who are like, they revealed themselves to be members of the KKK to us.
Yeah.
At some point, like after like strange, awkward conversations about like where I'm from, where Serbia is, what Serbia believes, you know what I mean? Things like that, where like I had to like basically like in the moment quickly justify my like dark hair and dark eyes, you know what I mean? Like it was like one of those situations where it was like, whoa, I'm not white enough right now, for one. And then when I was proved to be white enough, I was allowed into this universe of like, you know, whatever it is they believe. And they live, these people helped us fix our van, and they live in absolute squalor. And they asked only for, so like they did a nice thing for a bunch of like people that they thought were white, but they are people who actively put bad things into the world. And we were cornered into a situation where we had to like receive help from people that we were all ideologically at odds with.
Yeah. I mean, what exactly do you mean by like putting bad things out into the world?
Well, they're just people that like believe in things that I think are like abhorrent abhorrent human traits of like hate and supremacy and like violence towards like people who are not like them, who they perceive not to be like them, which is totally arbitrary.
Yeah, I mean,
because I was at that point of like the border of East and West. I was just on the west side of the East. You know what I mean? In that moment, and I'm just saying like it figuratively. You know what I mean? Like I'm just,
for sure. I guess like in my mind, like when it's, I mean, that's I mean, like it's arbitrary. What sucks is that all of it is arbitrary and all of it is sort of random, sprawling nothingness. It's like there are people who some intellectuals would look at and be like, well, you know, I mean, like this group grew up in a context where that was normal. They didn't grow up around different people from them. They're also probably uneducated. They're probably poor. And that's what kind of person that breeds. There you go. Like you have that justification, but you push that further. You push that sort of like the external world forms who I am. Like that's everything. Like the external world forms exactly who you are.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? Like you're part of a context, you're part of certain genes, you're part of a certain education, you're all things you can't control. And yet individually people get blamed for them all the time.
You're absolutely right. But I would push back on what you just said. Not push back, but I would add an element to what you just said. And that is this element of whiteness and white supremacy that is amorphous in the sense of like you don't like I don't know what it, like it's amorphous in the sense of like it includes a bunch of other stuff and it doesn't include some stuff and like some of this stuff overlaps. There's definitely a Venn diagram, but it does have an epicenter, and if we want to look at where that epicenter is, it is rooted in like the global north or the west in quotations, in the sense of like it's created its own sort of like level of like meta rules that people understand and feel and like that exist in the world and sort of has created a narrative of the world. I agree with you that everything is like
wait, whoa, pull back, because there was a bunch of things said there. Which part is like, what do you mean by the North?
The global North. It's a term that includes all of the colonies. The colonies and Europe. So like it's just an expression.
So okay. So that's what I thought. So like, I mean, but those things are always the same throughout time. Like they're like people who think they're better than others. They colonize things. They take over things. Like
absolutely, there's definitely
but that's why people rail on about the Turks in fucking Serbia. Like that's what because they were colonized by them, right? They have someone to blame.
Of course,
right?
But it's not just about having somebody to blame. It's about the power structures that are created while that's happening and how those carry over into day-to-day interactions, into like rules that are set, into laws that are formed.
Again, like look. Okay, explain to me what you mean by power structures.
Well, I'm not trying to get into like
but you brought it up. That's the thing. You brought it up.
In power when I say power structures, I mean like the rules that we function under in a society that are either based on the like official laws of the land or the culture within that land.
And those like, what do you feel like? Those are ever shifting.
No, of course. I just think that there are narratives that are formed from the meta narrative of like the history of our time and who gets to like proliferate, who gets to like put the information out there. Because going back to what we were talking about earlier and like social media and like America's role in the world. So like America's role in proliferating and putting forward dank memes, for instance. You know what I mean? Like that influence, and like the influence of a television show, the influence I'm talking about, like just the way all of this web interweaves to create the things that we come to know as like, why do you and I know that, like, you know that like pecking order, right? Or that that kind of like overall, if you had to look at like who's at the top of the food chain, and the way that these like identities, for lack of a better expression, intersect and are informed by the rules that are like formed through the way that everything unfolds. So I'm talking about like, I'm just
that just seems too, like, to me anyway, that's just too big and too nebulous in terms of, I don't know what any of that means. Like, I don't know what in what context you mean.
It's crushing because it's so overwhelming in terms of the broadness of the information.
That's why, like, paring it down to, hey, like even if it's a big question, hey, like, what would you want this world to look like? Is like, give something concrete to at least think about in terms of, like, I know people don't believe in global warming, but they do want a clean world. Do you understand what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's like those things, those beliefs don't have to converge for that one goal to be met.
Well, and that's
right?
a way.
And
that's a way to like sell that to conservatives. It's like,
exactly.
Be like, hey, do you want a clean world?
Do you want clean water? Do you want to not breathe bad air?
But the thing is, the way that we agree on how that gets done has its own.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Yeah, it does have its own sort of sprawling, monolith, like a leviathan of fucking shit that we have no control over and can't finish, can't do anything about.
Yeah.
But interesting conversation. I think it's probably done at this point because I'm sort of running out of energy.
Me too.
But I hope everybody has a happy new year, and I hope we don't get fucking Trump back in the White House for 4 years, because apparently, I keep hearing from people that I have predicted a lot of things that, it's like, this isn't done. It's still going to be a fight until fucking, what is it, the 14th? No, when is Trump leaving? The 20th?
Yeah.
So 10 more days. So to all my American friends, be safe and like, know that it's not over. And it's probably not going to be over for a long time. But knowing what the situation is like now in the States, like, I hope that we don't get Trump for another 4 years. Or forever. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because like,
but he doesn't have the like backing to do that. He's lost the confidence. Like, this situation
he's lost the confidence of Republicans, like people who were trying to save themselves, and now all those people who supported those Republicans have turned against them, the people that support Republicans, and they're like, we just support Trump now. Fuck everybody else. He's the one who hasn't been lying to us, even though the whole meme is that, like, he lies, but we know he lies, so that's fine. So it's just like a weird, like, loop of logic for them.
Well, they just, I mean, that's the psychology behind that rule. We can't.
We're gonna get into a whole other conversation, and I gotta go eat.
Okay.
But it was good talking to you. Let's do this again. Thirsty for more. Follow us on social medias, which you're gonna pump into this, right?
Yeah.
Follow us on social medias. That's one. I gotta go.
All right, see you later.
Great conversation, dude, but I gotta fucking...
Yeah. Do your thing. 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 Do your thing.